Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, we try to bring some value on these shows. And, if you haven't read my book, The Freedom to Say Yes, there's a lot of value in that. I don't just say that because I wrote it, but there's some great life lessons. And one of those early life lessons I had was reading the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I just recently dusted it off. You think you know something until you reread it for the 10th time. In my life, I think I've probably had it about 10 times. And I'm reading it on tape right now. But what's interesting and came to life to me last night, I was in the shopping center parking lot waiting for my wife to come out of Walmart, of all places, and just watching the activity in the parking lot and the lack thereof of enthusiasm from the employees even collecting the carts. And what's interesting is, I said to my kids, I said, how you do one thing is really how you do all things. And I'm watching this guy just standing around and letting the carts stack up on him. And, when people come out and they unload their cart and they see him not working very hard or not caring, then they tend not to care. So they don't push their cart back into the return area. And it's just laziness all around. And I just like to point out in this book that one part of this book talks about what is your QQS rating. A lot of people don't know what that is. So it is quality, quantity, and the spirit, all of which you do things. And it's something we're thinking about. I'm not going to give away the book if you haven't read it. And if you have, it's a great reminder. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Think about your QQS rating, quality, quantity, and the spirit in which you do things. And maybe you won't be the guy standing around the parking lot not doing your job, and the customers might care a little bit more and help you out. With that being said, and my show is about giving back and bringing value to you, I have Joe Robert on the line today from Robert Ventures. Good morning, good afternoon. How's it going?
It's going great, Jim. Thank you for having me on today, and I look forward to talking with all your listeners.
Yeah, we warmed up a little bit before I hit the record button here, and it's good to talk about one another's backgrounds and why we do what we do. And it sounds like you've got quite a variety of a background. I want to talk today about how we can help people get through some of this inflationary period that's already upon us. I know a few months ago on the show I was talking about it's coming, it's here big time, and it's only going to get worse. But before we do that, can you just give us a little background on yourself, where you've been, what you've done, and if you're an entrepreneur as a kid, we want to hear about that too. I sold gum in the parking lot at the school, so I started early. How about yourself? Give us a little background.
All right, I'll give you a little background. Since I was a young kid, I would say when I was a young kid, same old. I would go around, collect, buy baseball cards, etc. Me and a couple buddies from school, we'd go out in the middle of the night shoveling snow for neighbors just to make, whatever that was, $20 at that time. I remember going out and shoveling like 3 feet of snow, right? I mean, crazy. Not too many kids at that age were doing it at that time. That was I don't even know, 30 years ago, right?
Yep.
25 years ago. And so ultimately, as I was an early teenager, I decided also to expand that into landscaping for other neighbors. And so through my high school years, I, did landscaping work as a business. And then in in my junior and senior year, the only ability for me to get out of high school was to actually go to a tech school. So I signed up to go for construction work because I really didn't want to be in the school setting. So I took on that. And then after high school, I graduated and had basically my first business, JR's Contracting and Landscaping. And so this ultimately led to buying, because of that skill set I was building in the contracting space, I purchased my first property at the age of 19. Now, today, everybody's doing it, but 20 years ago, not that many people were doing it, right? So, I purchased my first property, and after that, I fixed it up, lived in there for 2 years, sold it for tax-free, right? Because it was a primary residence. And so you got that tax benefit. And I started investing in real estate from then on. In the 2000s in North Carolina, I was buying beach property and doing some lot subdivisions and fixing up properties. And basically that we had the real estate crash come at that point.
Joe, real quick, you say that casually. I jumped in, bought this property, lived in it for 2 years, and sold it tax free. We both know there's more to it than that, right? The key there is you said you lived in it, right, as you fixed it up. What was that like? Because people think, oh, I'm going to do the same thing. I mean, really, to find success in life, there's some hardships. You don't roll into this house that's a fixer upper and enjoy living there for 2 years. What was it like living there for 2 years as you fixed it up?
So yeah. So basically, it was an old, a couple 100-year old farmhouse with also a outbuilding, um, and a big barn. So what I did was I converted that outbuilding into an apartment first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we did did the whole interior, septic, etc. And then I moved into that. And then as I was finishing it, so I was living while I was doing the work, right? And then I decided to do the construction on the main house. Um, so that probably took that whole bit of 2 years in order to execute, doing the apartment and then doing the whole house, and at the same time also doing contracting work, as I mentioned earlier, and landscaping work as my main business to generate income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, I'm sure you had to work under a budget as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't make any money on the place. Right?
Well, I guess you could say that. I mean, my budget was back then when you first start remodeling, right? And doing those fix and flips, you're kind of going to get somewhat of the budget material and doing all the work yourself. So it was kind of just a matter of as I accumulated extra cash, I would get certain aspects of that project done throughout that 2 year period. And that's kind of how I went about that budget at that time.
Yeah. These days, we'd be tearing down that barn and using all that wood for the house and renovating it farm style, right?
Correct. Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So did that give you the fever to kind of go into that industry of development and buying and selling and doing all those things? Or did it at that point just seem like, okay, I can make some good money?
I think it was a little bit of both. I
Mm,
think it was one, it gave me a different avenue to allow my skill set as a contractor, right?
mm-hmm.
To go beyond doing just work for other people for little jobs and then being done. And then also the ability that I can make more money on a per deal basis and enjoy myself doing the work myself without a customer. And so therefore those are probably the reasons why I chose that.
Yeah. Hey, I want to back up for a minute because I glazed over it and I should not have because of what I'm passionate about. Most of my guests on this show are not college graduates. They have either become entrepreneurs or self-made, or the list goes on. We do have college graduates, and I do support continued education for the right people. But you said you went to tech school. You decided to go there. Did you have any college background, or did you spend any time in college, or did you only go to tech school? And it sounds like what you learned in tech school has benefited you greatly.
Yeah, so I only went to tech school, but it was not a after high school tech school. It was a during high school tech school.
Mm,
So in 11th, 12th grade, you could opt to go to the technical school across the street.
wow.
And that was my way of getting out of high school half the day because I didn't really like school itself. So I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I could sign up here and get out. Like, wow, great. So I went over there, signed up for, construction. And that's kind of what led that, pipeline, we'll call it, or that area of life.
Yeah. And we're pushed so often to arenas that we don't want to be in, and a lot of times that's college for the youth, and they're racking up big college debts. And here you found some passionate in this tech school, learning how to do construction and everything. So continue your career. I didn't mean to take that left turn, but I just think it's so important that people consider tech schools as an alternative.
No, that was great. Um, so let's see, we went through the 2000s. I mean, we went through the real estate crash, right?
Yeah.
So we had the real estate crash happen there, and pretty much a lot of people that were invested had some sort of losses, which was excellent because it gave me the ability to learn how to be a better asset manager moving forward in my
Mm,
early 20s, right? So owning property and kind of going through that whole thing just taught me different lessons on, let's say, not having assets like land that might not cash flow, right? Not to over leverage, not to speculate too much. These are a few things for all listeners. Definitely as we move through, as you acquire assets, right, you want to make sure cash flow can cover your debt service. And so I ultimately, stopped investing there and started investing again in the Philadelphia area in picks and flips. And I was during one deal, my private lender who was lending me money at 15% said he's moving his money over to another fund for 18%,
Mm,
right?
wow.
And so I said, what's this all about? He's like, it's a distressed debt fund that buys underwater second mortgages. So basically all the stuff that was being originated in 2000s, they were buying. And so I started actually attending those meetings and got very intrigued coming out of the downturn, the ability to actually own debt where people owed you money kind of versus the other side where real estate, you kind of always owe the banks money.
Mm-hmm.
So I started acquiring loans. I had someone work them out. Once the strategy was proven out, I kind of shifted my gear from acquiring real estate to acquiring distressed mortgages and partnered up with two people outside of Philadelphia. And we started buying pools of loans. And then in 2014, my partner and I were looking at how could we maybe move to a warmer climate and pay less in taxes. And I asked my lawyer, hey, what's going on with like this Cayman stuff, or is any of this stuff legal? Right? Because that was at a time like Obama, I think, was trying to crack down on some of that.
Sure.
And he said, I heard something about Puerto Rico, and so I went home, Googled that, and I seen the tax benefits. I flew down there that, and a couple months later, booked an apartment and moved down in 2014.
Big
And
move.
so, what was that?
Big move.
Definitely a big move, right? So we moved down there, my one partner and I, and we built relationships there with the banks, and we started acquiring more distressed REOs and mortgages. And then in 2017, we met other people that were moving down to Puerto Rico for the same tax benefits from the state side, and they were investing in crypto or digital assets, and we built relationships there. And ultimately, we seen how the world is kind of moving more to this digital economy with everything we do is digitized, or tech is playing a role in some type of automation across all industries. And coming from maybe the real estate side, it was just very intriguing. The energy was there. And so we started investing our own money.
So you're learning all these things. You're in another country. Crypto. I remember when it came out. It just seemed like this big black dark hole. How did you get up to speed, and how did you develop a level of comfort when you started getting involved more at that end?
I dabbled, we'll call I dabbled, right? I invested a small amount of money. I watched the portfolio. I started doing due diligence on all the projects. Definitely in the first 6 or 9 months, I made investments that probably didn't do well over a long period of time. I'll use my own capital. And now, 4.5 years later, we just have been in the game long enough that we have an understanding what's going on, how to do due diligence, and what is happening and kind of how it cycles. That's why I say for anybody listening is that the best step into any new investment is always to kind of play with a little bit of money for at least maybe a 6 to 12 month period and really get to understand the product that you're investing in and know what is really happening, because that's typically when you have the biggest losses.
Hmm. I love hearing you say that, especially your own story of 4 years later. You've got it figured out. People think that anything they get involved with, especially when they start looking at digital assets or digital anything, like this is going to happen overnight. A digital business, like we're gonna succeed overnight. It's just not the reality of it. And to your point, it's better to start small, learn it, and maybe a year into it, you can really start growing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I would say, even across the board of all assets, right? I mean, even your first real estate deal, your first startup, whatever, you're going to learn the most in the first 6 to 12 months. And you should always go into it with an understanding that it's going to at least take like a 3 to 5 years typically to execute certain things.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I like hearing you say that because people have forgotten about that old rule of thumb. It dates back to when I started my first business in the late 80s. My grandfather told me, he's like, Jim, you don't see success for 3 to 5 years. If you can make it to 5 years, you will make it. And that business rule still applies. Maybe it's shortened a little bit because of technology, but patience is the number one factor in success.
I think what has changed is people expect what they see on the internet to occur in 6 or 12 months, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is it's longer. So I always like to go out. Yeah, if you think of it as 3 to 5 year mindset, I mean, you should do well as long as you could execute along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Because I came from the alcohol business, I always love when people say, "Oh, Tito's vodka, it's brand new. It just came out. Like they're crushing it everywhere." Well, actually, Tito's been grinding it out for 15 years until you discovered it yesterday. And of course he is killing it. But guys like Tito himself working the market for all those years, grinding away 12-hour days, believing in his project. Same as where I worked at Kettle One. We talk about longevity, but when we look at what's happening right now in our economy and you consider inflation, um, it's going to get pretty heated here over the summertime, literally. What are you guys talking about in your circle of friends? How are you protecting your assets, or what are you making recommendations to people about how to be prepared for this?
Well, I think there's two things, right? Because obviously we have inflation on the table, and we possibly have somewhat of a recession or a pullback, or however you want to look at it, in the economy compared to at least maybe the last 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe piggybacking off what we just said a minute ago is most of what we're looking to invest in or make allocations to is more of a discussion around that 3 to 5 year time frame, right? Because if you kind of underrate a specific deal and you look at, let's just say, the next 12 or 24 months, the economy will not do very well, or you're forecasting for a 3 to 5 year, exit or a hold, I think the longer term horizon you have, the less risk you have, right? The more shorter term you try to exit a deal, typically the more risk you're going to be subject to what's happening in the economy and market.
Yeah, I think people really need to understand dollar cost average and try to take advantage of that. If you've got some spare change, look at how you can allocate that. And when this potential recession and inflation kind of starts to simmer down, and you look 2 to 3 years out, the dollars that you put away right now into something can be worth quite a bit, and you can come out of this thing pretty healthy if you play your cards right.
Yeah, I mean, I think back. That's one. Basically, what we're saying is, if we'll call dollar cost average over the next 24 months with a 5 year time horizon with whatever you're investing in, the probability or statistics behind you is greater that you'll have a great outcome.
Yeah, you said something that resonated with me when you talked about the real estate crash, that you learned a lot. And I know that we're not looking at a real estate crash. There might be a whole bunch of other crashes we're going to be looking at it. But what I like about times like this, when you have tough times, there's a great book, Tough Times Create Strong Men. When you take these types of scenarios and you really dig into what you're good at, where you can make money, where you can save money. I mean, up here on my ranch, we're cutting back on feed bills, like we're rotating our horses on the pastures so they're eating more grass and having to buy less hay. Little things like that. You could really dial in your own economics if you're smart about it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's. I mean, our buddy, everyone's buddy, I guess, maybe or not. Elon just even announced his 10% workforce cutback, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think almost all companies are seeing what's happening and being able to dial in where you could cut back some of your expenses, is a great is great to do here. But I think it's also a good thing to look at how you actually can expand, right? Because if we come into a slow downturn, it's actually a great time to uh, find talent out there that might have gotten laid off,
Mm-hmm.
or deploy, marketing dollars or Facebook ad spend might be cheaper because less companies are doing that also. So I think it's great to cut back in certain areas, but also figure out where maybe you can increase your budget to build out your business or whatever you're investing in for the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see on your bio, it talks about you've been involved with not only asset management, but startups and seed round funding. This may be a good time to take advantage of the marketplace and start something that's going to provide a solution for some of the issues that we're all rolling into. Any advice as it relates to starting companies and finding some seed round funding?
Well, right now, I think the market itself is trying to find some valuation foothold, right? Because where we were 3 to 6 months ago was not it was just we were overinflated in valuation. So those are kind of coming back down right now, and people looking to get funded is becoming more limited. So you definitely need to have a great MVP. Um, you need to probably have great relationships in that industry, or at least have some type of friends or something that can give you that connection to get that funding for that project.
Yeah, yeah. Money will be tight. As I mentioned to you offline, I raised $12 million for my tequila company. That was coming out of 2000, yes, 6, 7. We've got our first round of funding, and you know what it came down to, and this is probably good for our listeners, and maybe you can weigh in on it. Is it's really about the people and your drive, and I talked about Think and Grow Rich and some of the philosophies behind there. People invest in people. If you got a good business plan, that's great, but it's really about the people, right?
Yeah, I mean, personally, we like to now. I mean, we kind of shifted over the last few years, but like 2018, we probably invest in more startups now, maybe less. But we like to build a relationship with the founder before we're even going to invest ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, I guess we're just don't want to be looked at as just a money source. We're looking more of also the personal relationship. So whenever you're out there looking for capital, I think it's you need to look at what value those investors can bring to your startup, because that's ultimately going to be a great resource to when you hit these roadblocks along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You want some relationship capital from your investors, and also their buy-in that when chips are getting going down, that they're able to help or bring in some of their friends and give you a little shot in the arm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people get so lost in I need to raise some money, and they forget about the relationship on the other side of that money and what that could mean to them. It should be a value for value. It should be a good deal for both people, and the personality should mix. So don't get lost in the hey, this guy wants to give us $1 million for our business. Why does he want to give you $1 million, and is it a good fit?
I agree totally.
Yeah. What does your routine look like as it relates to finances and business, and how aggressive are you working right now? Towards your goals. Are you on autopilot, or are you grinding it out every day? I know the
I'm
answer, but we
definitely
got to ask it.
I'm definitely grinding out more than I want to be. Is that, definitely grinding out more than I want to be. Right now we are in the process of setting up, well, we have set it up, launching just our kind of our own internal or a fixed rate product, right?
Hmm.
That we're going to be offering out for interest um, to any of our investors. And so kind of setting that all up is taking a lot of time, just kind of doing the marketing. Most of our relationships have been on the real estate side. So coming into the tech side, the digital asset side is definitely a little bit different. It's a bigger challenge for the next few years. Ultimately, we want to be able to provide yield to all those that qualify in the US and maybe even outside the US at a later date. Um, so that's basically, yeah. I mean, we're busy all the week with that, with that.
Yeah, no free time, making it happen. Well, tell us where we can find more about you, what your business is doing, what are some of the benefits of looking into your group, and where you guys are heading.
So right now we're a handful of us that work together, underwriting deals, investor relations, head of research, quantitative analysis, and qualitative analysis. And then we have a few people on the marketing side. We're currently buying and managing a portfolio of liquid digital assets. We also have investments in other technology companies or through funds that we have relationships with. And we currently are setting out to offer everyone a yield product where they get interest only at 8 to 10% annualized rate. And that's locked up for 12 to 36 months. And, our goal is really to build our portfolio of assets and provide investors yield over the next decade or so. And we look forward to that.
Awesome. Joe, you've got a great YouTube channel. I pulled it up earlier this morning, and all kinds of topics, not just the few that we talked about on this show, but a vast amount of information on there. So I want to encourage everybody to check out the YouTube channel. I couldn't even go through all the topics on here and all the great guests, but if you're interested in what's happening in digital and the things that we talked about, it's certainly worth popping over to Joe's YouTube page, and you can find that. I'll leave it in the show notes today.
Yeah, we have a lot of different projects that are in the space that are building great things that we interview. We also interview other fund experts people in the tax space when it comes to tax planning, right? I mean, everyone wants to kind of save on tax dollars, and that's where we do it. And we try bringing the best guests we can.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Like I said, there's so many topics on here, but looks like you have 4 or 5 videos just on tax, and a dollar saved is a dollar earned. So if you can figure that out, you might as well save where you can. So, hey, we appreciate your time and your knowledge here, and look forward to seeing where you take this thing and watching some of these YouTube videos in my spare time. But knowledge is king, right?
I agree. Knowledge and network.
Yeah,
I'm a big thing on network too.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thanks for your time today and being on the Answers Yes podcast.
Jim, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answers Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.